Nobody knows what the revolution will look like. Nobody knows exactly what form it will take, but if you would like a good idea, just look at France. Now, this may be something that lasts only a few months and then goes away, but unless the French government actually meets the demands of the Yellow Vests, I doubt this will occur. No, I think that this is the beginning of a legitimate revolution. Many say that the uprising in France is because of fuel prices. However, I believe that the fuel tax was just the straw that broke the camel's back. I believe that there is much, much more behind the French people rising up against their government. Now, what do we know about the French protests? Well, we know that it's mostly white people, the only true Frenchmen by blood, the white working class who are the Yellow Vests taking to the streets. They refer to themselves as the unwashed masses, the taxpayers, the ones mostly affected by the shift to globalization in France and the West. Does this sound familiar? You see, in every Western country it's the same. The white working class, and more specifically the white rural working class, are the ones who pay most of the taxes, produce most of the food, and claim less federal benefits while their government pushes them aside to welcome in millions of a cheaper, lower-skilled population into their country. And it's the white working class who is footing the bill. In every single Western nation, it's the same story. It is the white people that are the most negatively affected by globalization. Take France, for instance. While the cosmopolitans are having a great time taking the bus, train, and other public transportation means to their jobs in urban areas of the country, the white working class in rural areas need to use their cars. So, who do you think is most affected by the 64% tax on unleaded and 59% tax on diesel fuel? And then to hear that the reason for the fuel tax in the first place is to lower carbon emissions. This likely really pissed off the white working class. Why? Well, if it weren't for immigration and globalization into Western industrialized nations in the first place, carbon emissions would be less of an issue. Why, you ask? Well, it's simple. When you look at any one of the G8 Western developed industrialized nations, whether it be France, America, Italy, Germany, England, etc., you will see that the birth rates in these countries have been well below replacement rate for decades upon decades. So, simply put, without immigration, there would be hundreds of millions less people in the 20 most industrialized countries that have the highest rate of CO2 emissions of any country on Earth. Which means hundreds of millions of less cars, which emit 6 tons of carbon each and every single year. The population growth of every single G8 country, especially America, which will be at around 430 million people in 20 years, is solely attributed to immigration and the children the immigrants have. America is number 2 on the list of countries that have the highest CO2 emissions. So if the cosmopolitan rich ruling class really cared about carbon emissions, they would be against immigration of a population from south of the equator that have double the birth rate and focus on their nation achieving a healthy birth rate through incentive programs if need be.
Not only our Muslim communities, but African communities, Asian communities, Hispanic communities, and the wave still continues. It's not going to stop. Nor should we want it to stop. An unrelenting stream of immigration. Non-stop. Non-stop. Folks like me who were Caucasian of European descent, for the first time in 2017, will be in an absolute minority in the United States of America.
All while wages would be pretty good because the population would be in control and companies would have to compete for the worker and not the workers who now have to compete for the jobs because of overpopulation. Unfortunately, though, they care a little bit more about the corporations they serve that need cheap labor. They also care about power, and for them, immigrants from south of the equator always equals votes. So for a white person who shows up to work, pays the taxes, comes home from work, and then watches on the news that their leaders need them to pay even more taxes so that we can afford free college, healthcare, and welfare for a population who has a double the rate of welfare usage, works under the table, causes a higher per capita rate of crime, and has no ethnic connection to their ancestors who sacrificed the blood, sweat, and tears to create the system in the first place that welcomed them with open arms, this may piss a few people off. especially here in America, where they come waving the flags from their home country, refuse to learn the language, and then they show up at protests demanding the system be changed. This may be why you have Donald Trump. But back to France. I believe this truly is the beginning of a nationalist revolution. The left and the nationalists both currently frown upon the ruling class and have different end goals in mind. However, they are currently joining forces to overthrow the same people. It appears to me, however, that the right-wing nationalists may be the most organized of the two sides in France. While the nationalists are taking aim at federal buildings, burning down postmodern degenerate art museums, and protecting nationalist monuments, the communists are creating unorganized chaos and taking most of the brunt of the CRS riot control retaliation. Meanwhile, you have the nationalist yellow vests who are making their demands clear and successfully getting police and firefighters to defect to support their movement. The Yellow Vest have an overwhelming 80+% approval rating with the French public, and the police are going to their side. Here you can see the police taking off their helmet, showing solidarity with the Yellow Vest. As the Yellow Vests and the crowd recite nationalist chants like, "This is our home," you even have high school students ready and willing to join the ranks in France. Yes, this is absolutely, truly appearing to be a legitimate revolution. Over half of all of the French are opposed to immigration. Most of the people in all European nations disagree with the way that the EU is handling immigration. And yet, the unelected bureaucrats in the EU hold the course, allowing their women to be defiled and their culture to be completely transformed. "We must lower carbon emissions," shouts the UN, while they publish articles on their website entitled Replacement Migration, explaining how birth rates in these countries are too low and we have to bring in millions more culturally incompatible people who have higher birth rates. "Wages are too low," shouts the American left, while they lobby their government to abolish ICE and open the borders to millions upon millions of low-skilled, low-wage workers, causing wages to further decrease. While the Brexit you voted for stalls in Britain, while your leaders sign the UN Global Compact for Migration in Europe, while your statues are being taken down and destroyed in America, while your Christmas markets are being rammed down in Germany, and all of your favorite holidays are banned in the West, expect to see the Yellow Vest movement expand and spread to Europe, expect a European revolution in the near future, and expect America, who coined the protest against taxes in the first place, to follow soon too.